The Liszt organ is referred to as an American reed organ or an American harmonium and shares many characteristics in common with the European harmonium. Both require airflow to sound sets of metal reeds. In the case of the American instrument, the difference is that the American instrument sucks the air inward, and it's called a suction instrument, whereas the European presses the air outward, like a trumpet, and it's called a pressure instrument. Both the European harmonium and its American counterpart began development in the 1840s as small home instruments intended for playing, for dancing, accompanying singers, easy transcriptions of classics, and religious music. And that function continued all the way up through the 1920s. However, as both the European and the American became bigger and had more capability in terms of stops, sounded louder, they became used as substitutes for the pipe organ in churches and chapels. A great deal of religious music was written for both the European and the American version. Some of it is retreads of classical music arranged for these two instruments. In the case of the European harmonium, the builders decided to standardize their stops. In other words, stop number 1 would have a certain sound, stop number 2 would have a certain sound, and so forth. That enabled composers to notate into their music which stops they preferred the performer to use for their compositions. In America, that didn't happen as much. You didn't have the kind of standardization you had in Europe. The second thing that made a difference was the fact that there was a tradition of high art culture in Europe. And the builders of the harmonium, the big ones, decided that they would create more complex instruments with lots of different tonal capabilities and especially expressive capabilities, enabling crescendo, accent, and so forth, so that it could be used by composers and performers to play music of a very sophisticated art music type. In the United States, that didn't happen for all the reasons we know why, and as a result, you don't have a literature for the Liszt organ like you have for the European art harmony, despite the fact that the Liszt is a highly sophisticated instrument. That said, there was a repertoire that was perfect for an American reed organ, and that is the American hymnology that was written by American composers beginning in the Revolutionary War with William Billings and going into the 19th century, where there were dozens of wonderful hymn writers, including Lowell Mason, who was related to the Mason family of Mason and Hamlin, Ira Sankey, Fanny Crosby, and of course culminating in the great African American spirituals and hymns by African American composers. All of these hymns were published plentifully in hymnals in a wide range of denominations and became disseminated in the United States and ultimately worldwide via the performance on reed organs that were housed in churches throughout the United States and elsewhere. The rich, warm sound, very supportive of the American reed organ and its top version, the Liszt organ, was perfect for performance of these materials. And so I want to end my little talk with me playing Lift Every Voice and Sing by John Weldon and his brother Rosamond Johnson, African American composers, on the mighty Liszt organ.